We are going to relate the genocide in Rwanda with the terms power and state. Back in 1994, in just 100 days, the Rwandan genocide of Tutsi by extremist Hutu took place. 2 million Rwandans fled the country and 800,000 people were killed. Physically, Hutus were shorter and dark-skinned than Tutsis, who were tall and light-skinned. Also, Tutsis were farmers and eventually became leaders of the government, while Hutus used to be lower class. During German colonialism, Tutsi had German support. In 1959, there was a Hutu revolution that killed 20,000 Tutsis. After Rwanda's independence in 1963 to 1973, there was violent tensions that led to mass killings of Tutsis. The genocide started when the plane carrying the president Juvenal was shot down. Also, Hutu extremists blamed the RPF and started a campaign of slaughter. And lists of government opponents were handed out to militias who went out and killed them. The RPF, backed up by Uganda's army, marched into the capital. Around 2 million Hutu fled to the Republic of Congo. Also, Rwanda's government, run by the RPF, invaded Congo twice, accusing them of letting the Hutus militias operate on their territory. 3 types of justice systems were installed: Criminal Tribunal of Rwanda, Rwandan National Courts, or local Gakaka courts. Also, the president was Paul Kagame, and now the government prevent more bloodshed. With this definition of power, we can relate the genocide in a way that Hutus did not care about Tutsis' power, because they knew even when they had the power, they were a majority. Tutsis' power was imposed over Hutus by a coercive or non-coercive, and for years this worked. Putting these 2 definitions together, we can see that A was always Tutsis and B was Hutus, so to have power, A affected B in a significant way, and they didn't care about Hutus' interests, which is why Hutus lived in poor conditions. Political leaders and propagandists back in the genocide said that Tutsis did not have the right to live there, and despite the revolution, Tutsis continued to enjoy higher status and greater wealth than Hutus. The genocide took place in 1994 when tensions began to appear between the 2 ethnicities. According to Lorenzi, this is an example of observable conflict, because Hutus were exterminating Tutsis in order to acquire power. Rwanda was able to call himself a state until they faced struggle for independence with Belgium. And although they get their independence, we must not forget that Rwanda still had many influence of the Belgians. Since 1973, President Habyarimana had run a totalitarian regime in Rwanda, which had excluded all Tutsis from participating. At the same time, Tutsis refugees in Uganda, supported by some moderate Hutus, were forming the Rwandan Patriotic Front, led by Mr. Kagame. In 1993, the Hutu president and the RPF signed a peace treaty, which ended in 1994 after the plane shot. Within 24 hours after the crash, Hutus extremists had taken over the government, blamed the Tutsis for the assassination, and began the slaughter. Then, Hutus extremists began purging the government, which meant even the prime minister was killed. When the Belgian UN peacekeepers tried to protect the prime minister, they were killed too. This caused Belgium to start withdrawing its troops from Rwanda. The measurements taken by the government can be justified through the definition of state by Weber. In conclusion, the conflict between the Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda was getting out of control. The state made use of the monopoly over the use of force, and it was clearly an abuse, even though it was never proven that the Tutsi really overthrew the plane on which the president was on. But this gave them a pretext to put an end to them once and for all.
Created using Powtoon.